Morning, ladies and gentlemen. Delayed start, but I'm told that in Bangalore, you're dependent on the traffic gods to bless you, and I guess today the rain gods as well. So what I'm going to talk about initially, 10, 15 minutes, is about the challenges that high-tech startups face. This is a set of points that I've collated from my own experience of certainly the last 10 years when I've done a lot of work with startups. And when I was running the India Electronics and Semiconductor Association, and later when I was heading the Skills Sector Skill Council, we tried to create what I like to call the infrastructure for innovation. The first electronics product incubator was set up by the IESA in Delhi in 2013, I think. With Delhi University and STPI. And there are learnings from that. That template has then been replicated across the country. And what I'm going to talk about in the next couple of minutes is based on my own first-hand observations. So let's see if this works. Okay, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this because you've probably seen all these numbers from yesterday and certainly during the course of the day. Third largest ecosystem, 57,000 startups. Interestingly, 2,300 high-tech startups just last year alone. But the worrying fact is the last point. 90% of these startups fail. So, and out of that, 10% fail in the first year and 70% fail between the second and third years. So the challenge that entrepreneurs have, especially in the high-tech space, is how are you going to extend your runway so that your time to revenue, time to, and percentages of success are increased? So one, again, experiential knowledge, focus. Do you want to do a product startup? Do you want to do a services startup? Or do you want to sail on both boats? These are not, these are hard choices for founders. And my favorite analogy on a services startup is that services startup is like a 24-hour news channel. So every couple of hours, you need to have that breaking news ticker. And the problem with services startups is they go through ups and downs. And let's say you're doing electronic product development for a large company overseas. And you've obviously done your testing, you've released the product, and they've integrated into the larger system. As they're going into production, they report a test case failure, critical failure. And you need to assemble a team. You need to assemble an expert team because there is a factory waiting for this product to launch. And at that stage, you need highly experienced engineers. Now, you've got an IPR-based product team, and you've got a services team. Guess where your good guys are? They're all in the product side. So you're going to pull them in, and your schedules go for a toss. I'm not even going to talk about IP contamination issues, serious but not relevant to the point I'm trying to make here. Second, innovation, most misused word today. Everyone says I'm doing innovation. Problem is, and I'll develop this point later, far too many founders don't talk to customers. You sit in your conference room, you sit in your bedroom, or you sit in your college cafeteria and you say, this is the problem that has to be solved. Problem is there somebody who's willing to pay you for the problem you're trying to solve? So unless you know what the market needs, what kind of innovation are you talking about? Second, try and focus on the outcome. Try and focus on the problem you're trying to solve. Don't use technology for the sake of technology. And especially today, there are too many buzzwords. Too many people say, "Arey yaar, I'm going to use AI, I'm going to use ML, I'm going to use blockchain." And then you go to, when you sit down with them and say, what does the customer want? What is the solution you're developing? So for heaven's sake, don't chase technology for its own sake. And finally, too much of reuse, too much of reaching into GitHub. The city of Bangalore is the home of the book on Jugaad. IIM professor wrote it. But please understand, if you want to develop a world-class product, Jugaad and Chalta Hai doesn't cut it. You need to have excellence, you need to have design, and there are methods of validating your hypothesis. So please, for heaven's sake, I'm not saying don't reuse, but reuse with care. Secondly, please remember anything that you pick from GitHub is put there with a specific application context. Please understand that context before you integrate it into production software or production VLSI or production hardware groups that you're going to use. What is the omnibus term, product market fit? If you're not talking to customers, if you've not defined use cases, you really don't know what product you're building. And not enough attention is paid to how are you going to acquire customers. This is especially true of B2C companies who have conjured up visions of looking at what is happening in Silicon Valley, looking at what is happening in Europe, and they think the same thing applies here. Doesn't. Second, you haven't looked at deployment scenarios. At a previous India Electronics Week in this very venue a couple of years ago, I won't take the name, but a telecom infrastructure company CTO was here, and he was talking about how they were deploying that equipment to be used in Chennai. Beautiful cast iron casing. And they forgot that cast iron casing without a powder coating on it will rust. Within 1 year, the telecom provider had called them and said, change the equipment, it doesn't work anymore. So please understand what your deployment scenarios are. Please understand what your support requirements are. If you're sitting in Bangalore and you're shipped a product to, Arunachal Pradesh, and you get a call for support, lots of things that you take for granted are not going to be present there. So please understand what your support requirements are, especially if you are in industrial IoT and you're going to do deployment in a remote factory site and you're sitting in Bangalore or Ahmedabad or Hyderabad or any of these metro cities. Lots of things that you take for granted, including people, the kind of expertise that you require for installation, troubleshooting, uninterrupted power supply, clean power, those will not exist. Supply chain issues, I think the pandemic has vividly brought this to fact. One is you can talk to a distributor, you'll be quoted lead times of anything from 6 months to 24 months. If you decide to go to SP Road or Lamington Road or Nehru Place, the parts are either not available or something which used to cost 250 rupees pre-pandemic will today cost you 5,000 rupees. And so your product cost is completely broken down. Finally, please remember, particularly for engineers who worked in large companies, if you're starting out on your own, please remember, if you want to source 10 cent, 20 cent resistors, capacitors, you run into what is called MOQ, minimum order quantity. Please be aware of those issues. Supply chain can bite you very hard if you're not planning for it. Staffing, finding the right co-founder, and it's been said in enough startup conferences, finding the right co-founder is like finding the right life partner. And choose a co-founder who gives you complementary skills. What we see far too often is 5 friends get together and say, I'll be CEO, you be CTO, you be CIO. Doesn't work that way. Please understand that the only thing that is relevant is your venture. And you you pick co-founders or you hire team members which are good for the venture. And coming to the team, as you scale, as you get more people, that's fine. But the first set of people you hire will have to share your vision. Because getting the product out, getting the product developed and the product out, unless you have team members who buy into your vision and are willing to put in those hours, you're not going to see that. Those of you who followed the Twitter saga on television and media, you will see when Elon Musk turns around and says, I want hardcore team members. Everything comes on Twitter. So the Twitter guys are abusing Twitter on Twitter. Funding, one can, I guess, have a whole session on this, but please understand, a good friend of mine who's a VC and investment banker has a famous saying, I don't look at pitch decks. Far too many founders think a pitch deck is a business plan. It's not. Second, When you do a business plan, it has to be a live document. It is something that you keep revising. It's not something that you create a nice business plan, put it in a ring binder, and put it on your shelf and forget about it. Third, all the founders have to be on the same page on the business plan, preferably your initial set of team members as well, because that is going to decide how you do this. Investor expectations. In the panel, we're going to have a VC here. I'm sure he will have lots of things to talk about it, but let me take a name very deliberately. Ladies and gentlemen, Ashneer Grover is not a good role model. If you're going to take a lot of money from your investors and then start abusing them and telling them that, you don't know how to run my business, well, then if you're getting crores and crores of rupees from the investor, he is going to tell you very well how much he's going to spend it. Spending money on non-essentials, getting a 5-star office, buying a Mercedes-Benz, ultimately you realize there is no money left for product development. Related point, don't raise money from the wrong investors. Many people in Bangalore certainly will know what is called the real estate investor. He expects a 100% return in 1 year. And product development is a long, drawn process. So focusing on cash flow. Far too many startups are busy giving free samples, free installations, or they'll raise a PO, but they don't follow up on payment. If you take your eyes off cash flow, ladies and gentlemen, it's true for any company. But especially for startups, if you take your eyes off cash flow, trust me, you're dead. There's no other nicer way of putting it. I talked about the need to envision this. One of the techniques to use is design thinking, and there is enough material on the web on how to use principles of design thinking for your product design cycle. And finally, I can't stress this enough. Please have an advisory board whom you can lean back on, particularly if you are a paradigm-busting startup. May not necessarily be deep tech. Very true in the case of deep tech, but if you're going to bust a paradigm, if you're challenging the status quo, please note the incumbent players are not going to roll over and die. They're going to oppose you tooth and nail. Now, if you are going in saying, this is how I'm going to challenge you, please make sure a different set of eyes have looked at your design, have looked at your architecture, have looked at your rollout plans. And this is where mentors become extremely important. And I've seen too many founders who come out and say, nobody is competent to review my plan. There's a problem there. OK, a couple of suggestions. I've already talked about the focus. I've been in too many conferences where typically somebody with 2-3 years experience comes and tells me, I want to do a startup. And my first question is, what is your motivation to do it? And I'm kind of surprised. Either all my friends are doing startups, or it's cool to be a startup, or, you know what, I can raise money doing a startup. Well, the guys who have the money know how to evaluate because it's their money that they're giving you. Second, if your only motivation to do a startup is to be cool, then you may want to do Instagram Reels instead of doing a startup. Please plan a POC as soon as possible, because that's the only way to validate. PowerPoint is good up to a point, but unless customers have actual physical product to handle, they are not going to be able to believe you. Final point, sometime in your journey, when you have a POC, you are going to be meeting people who will say, you know what, I can do a derivative. And far too many founders are so hung up on that idea of theirs that they'll say, no, I want to do that. There are no right answers here, ladies and gentlemen. If you've got a great product idea, then that is the way to go. But if you think you can get cash flow going, and if it's not too much of a deviation from what you're doing, if the customer is willing to give you an advance, take it, hire a few extra people who have experience in customer support, deploy with a derivative. And secondly, if the customer turns around and says, I like it, but I'm going to sell it as my brand, do it, white label it. The ecosystem exists. We're going to have the CEO of India's largest ESDM incubator on the panel. So please use them. These incubators and accelerators exist. Most of them will give you access to funding where you don't have to lose too much equity. They can give you access to mentor networks. They can give you access to a lot of other facilities. And yeah, it's a pity that I have to say it, but too many technology companies think that sales and marketing is, I'll build the best product and the world is going to stand in line to buy it from me. Ain't going to happen. So please prioritize sales and marketing. Engage early with customers. Stay engaged. Second, guys, it's a startup. It's risky. And there is no penalty. There is no shame in saying that idea didn't work. Question is, can you pivot? And can you pivot fast enough? And Paytm, which is such a big brand, the company started off selling SIM cards. I don't know how many of you know that. So lots of these companies which are very successful have pivoted. So there's no shame in that. Finally, standardization, interoperability. If you are not doing an end-to-end product, but what you are selling fits into a larger piece of the puzzle, please understand the complete end-to-end solution. Where do you fit in? And look at interoperability. I spent 25 years of my life with the semiconductor industry. So we were the ultimate B2B business. And our chips would be designed into the likes of the Sonys and the Panasonics of the world. And then they would go and sell products. So we had a famous saying in our semiconductor industry, always talk to your customer's customer. Because your customer has a view of the market. But unless your customer is Apple, who can give you those millions of pieces of volume so that you can probably run a product line only for Apple. But if you have to sell it to multiple customers, you need to know which way the market is going. The market may not be going in the direction that your biggest customer is telling you. It may be beginning to turn. And the best example of this is those of the chip companies or the electronics companies which were selling to the old SLR camera makers. In 5 years, the market evaporated when smartphones got cameras in. So please make sure that you're talking to your customer's customer. Walk around exhibitions. Look at what is being sold. Attend conferences. Obviously, it's not the function of everyone in the company, but certainly if the CEO doesn't know what is happening, then that is a recipe for disaster. With that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Those are my remarks. We'll get the panel in. They're very, very experienced people on the panel. So, Sushmita, you want to? And we'll take Q&A right at the end, because I suspect a lot of the questions that you have will be answered by my very eminent and erudite panelists. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. To begin with, we have our panel discussion happening. The keynote panel discussion topic would be the challenges that high-tech startups face and how to solve them. To chair the discussion, we have our very own PVG Bedin sir, who would be joining us very soon on the stage. And I would like to invite the panelists for the discussion. The first in line is Nizamuddin Mohammadji, CEO Maker Village. With extensive global and regional experience in entrepreneurship, strategy and planning, and commercial operations, Nizam Mohammed leads the startup ecosystem at Maker Village. He works with innovative and transformational startups, collaborating with various stakeholders to grow and sustain a vibrant startup ecosystem. Can we have a big round of applause to welcome our panelists, please? Thank you so much. The next online is Mr. Som Shubhro Pal Chaudhary, partner, Bharat Innovation Fund. Mr. Chaudhary is a partner with Bharat Innovation Fund. Previously, Som was managing director of Analog Devices India, headquartered in Boston, and was based for almost 2 decades in Silicon Valley in various roles. Global product management and marketing director at Netgear, first employee of an early M2M IoT, associated with Cadence Design Systems. He was a board member and executive council member of industry body IESA. Mr. Chaudhary is an active advisor and mentor to several startups and co-chairs India's IoT ecosystem, building think tank IoT Forum, and India's top IoT conference, IoT Next. Can we please continue with the applause as I call them up? Mr. Rijan John, Inviting you on the stage, please. He is co-founder and director at Cilium Circuits. To mention a little about him, he's a protagonist in Harvard Business Review and Ivy Business Case Studies. With 3 international patent filings, he is also a 3 Limca Book of World Records holder. The next thank you so very much. The next in line is Mr. Prabhu Stawat, Director, Refillbot. Electronics and communications engineer with 18+ years of experience in enterprise product design, development, and sales, worked in HP, Siemens, and EMC data storage systems across India, US, and Europe regions. Serial entrepreneur, built 2 startups with 1 lakh customers and $500,000 revenues since 2019, building Refillbot, a plug-and-play IoT platform to convert any device to smart. Refillbot currently caters to government and private enterprises across utilities, industrial automation, and appliance monitoring. Very happy to have you all on the stage. Thank you so very much.
Yeah. Okay, good old Murphy never quite goes away. Murphy's law always operates. All right, so great panel to have here. What we'll do in terms of a format is, I think these gentlemen will take 5 minutes to give you opening comments, and then I have some questions. But ladies and gentlemen, the panel ultimately is as good as how each of you, what each of you take away from it. So our objective is to talk as little as possible and take as many questions as possible from all of you. So Nizam, do you want to lead off with your opening remarks? And Nizam, you're the only incubator CEO here. So
yeah.
All right, over to you.
Morning, everyone. PVG, thank you so much, and it's an honor to be a part of this eminent panel to talk about startups and the major challenges that they face within the high-tech sector and all. I don't know after what PVG showed in the short presentation, but he did cover all the major challenges and everything, so I don't know what to add further to that. But however, having said that, in my opinion, having led MakerVillage, which is India's largest electronic hardware incubator and ESDM facility, within the last year and a half, having seen the ecosystem, what I am feeling that is, we are at a very excellent phase for startups. I mean, with the government supporting so much in terms of, I have to be very optimistic here, and there are a lot of support that is coming in from the government side, and with the national startup policy being also announced earlier this year. Then you also have the public sector units and the DPSUs, also defense public sector units also, that are actually now procuring from the startups. So there's a lot of trend that is going towards startups, and I've heard about this, but I'm not sure. But even, Shaadi.com now has a category that, where the employment is a startup founder. I don't know, I have not searched on it, but I heard from somewhere. So it's like becoming a startup founder is now the trend as such. And it's a good time also. So someone the other day was asking me, is this a good time to start a startup? And I said, any time is a good time to start a startup, as long as you understand the market and the needs of the customer. Second, you have a valid product that will actually fulfill that requirement. And third, you know when to ask for support or when to connect with a mentor to require any guidance on that side. Having said that, these 3 aspects are also the main key problems that I have been seeing within the startups also. They don't normally connect with the startups. These are some of the things that we will talk about, and PVG also shared in his presentation. The product market fit. You actually don't, even within the product development phase, you're not actually talking to the customer. You don't know what his needs are. So your product is not actually meeting his actual requirements. So that's one big issue. Second thing is, you don't have a product that is developed, and with every hardware product, you need rapid prototyping, and you need to come out with the product fast. So fail fast is something that we always, profess. We need to say, come out with the product, test it out with your target segment, and then see, and then iterate on it. And third, you also need to be prepared on when to ask for support, because there is a whole ecosystem that is lying out there, which is there to actually support you. So you should be able to keep your mind open and be flexible enough and ask the support when it is required. I think we'll deliberate more on that in the discussion that is coming up. And with that, I'll hand over back to you, Pete.
Great. Thanks, Nizam. And it's interesting that Shaadi.com already has a,
yes.
People used to say, why can't we have a Naukri.com for startup founders? Now, maybe they should look at Shaadi.com instead of Naukri.com. Yes. All right, Prabhu, can I come to you? I want to swing between, an institutional enabler versus entrepreneur who's out there. So your opening comments.
Sure. Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Maniji. Thank you for this opportunity. Starting up is hard, very hard, and a lot of challenges and chaos out there. So I think we just have to make our way to it. And I think what will drive is what do you want to build, and do you have a customer to solve? Is there a problem to solve? Identifying the problem and going through the whole journey of building the product. Do you have to build the product at all in the first place? You have a problem, and then how do you build a minimalist of the product? Or sometimes even you don't even need a product, you can just take a PPT and then go out there and pitch and get the first customer. Once you do that, then I think getting a PO, like what Mananji mentioned about a lot of those challenges in terms of getting to the first PO, and then once you have the PO, the time starts ticking. How do you build the product? So we were fortunate enough that we had enough supplies. The supply chain was still good. And then we were able to source the components. Arrow is our sourcing component partner, and then they were able to get us on priority and stuff like that. So we didn't have the product when we went to the market. We got the first PO. So that's how we started, and then different challenges. Once you have a customer, then fine, great, you deployed the solution. Then how do you get the repeating business, the cash flow part of it? So is this the problem that multiple of the customers have? It's good that we just built one product and it got us some revenue, but then from there to repeating business, and how do we pivot so that we can find a repeatable business? That's another challenge, and we are going through that actually right now. And then how do you do a market? How do you get a PR? How do you get your brand? Brand building is so important once you have a product out there, so that your prospects can discover you. Either they are Googling, they are on the LinkedIn, they are reading some newspaper. How do the prospects can figure out? For example, we did a PR. Arrow did a PR for us, which was a global PR, like across 150 countries. And guess what? So we had an inbound customer from US. Now we are doing pilot for New York Municipal and as well as for the Greece. So PR is so important, and that's something. I think it happened organically, but then it's good to have that sense of having a marketing in place and sort of building your brand in your early stage, and then sort of scale up. So I think, yeah, we're still in that stage. Hopefully we'll get there.
So Prabhu, that's you're living the journey of scaling up from POC and
Yes.
early adopters to scale. That's a fascinating discussion we should touch upon.
Yes.
So you're going to be the guy everyone's going to want to get to know and become best friends with. So your opening remarks.
Sure. So by the way, this is probably one of the best times to start a startup, right? Reasons are plenty. Post-COVID days, tremendous amount of appetite with DLI, PLI schemes with the government of India. Even though compared to 2021, some of the funding aspects and so forth have dried down, the VCs, the investors are sitting with tons of cash, right, on the sidelines. So this is a perfect time to build up a really good startup, and you can get employees for cheap compared to 2021, right? So perfect time. Now that being said, I just want to kind of try to structure up the conversation on 3 different aspects of the startups, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 you call it, and what are the typical challenges and so forth I have personally seen these startups to face. And while every startup is unique, every startup is different, there are a few common threads that you guys need to be watching out for, right? So phase 1, what is it? You are forming the company. You are trying to build up from an idea to POC, maybe to an MVP, minimum viable product. And these are the areas, this is the stage where typically the problem, what happens if it's a tech entrepreneur, he thinks, as PVG highlighted, I know what I want to build, right? And hey, I'm going to build this product, and this is so many times what we have heard. I'm going to build this product, I'm going to hire a bunch of sales guys, they're going to go out and sell. Guys, it doesn't work that way. So the first thing that we need to do, any founder conceptualizing a product, maybe at an idea stage, you guys need to go out, talk with a minimum of 50 to 100 customers and partners, bare minimum. Put up the notes, then kind of ideate with your team. As PVG highlighted as well, getting a complementary set of founders is extremely important. We love to see 2 people as co-founders, ideally. A single founder, it's a long journey. They need to hire the team early on. If it's 2 co-founders, one focused on tech side, one focused on the business side, that's an ideal combination. If it's more than 3, they get into a fight. That's historically what we have seen, right? So this is the ideation to POC phase. Talk with as many partners, customers, people in the ecosystem, understand competition, right? And these are easy to say, but you have to have a prepared mind in terms of actually going out, making sure every day you're talking with 1 or 2 customers. You have a set of specific questions you are asking them and refining your idea to POC. And don't try to boil the ocean at this stage. That's where we call MVP, minimum viable product. No need to add up all of these features which will take another 1 year, right? So that's the phase number 1. Phase number 2 is the most critical. That's where you're going out, trying to essentially see if the dog is going to eat the dog food. Is the customers willing to kind of take it up, pilot, right? So that's where you kind of do a pilot, a POC with the customer, and I would essentially say, do not go for a free POC. At least get some money out of the customer. His willingness to pay gets tested, right? And at the end of the day, you are also trying to do a bit of a pricing discovery at that stage, right? Finding out, hey, what would be a business model? Is it a complete NRE? It doesn't work. No investor is going to go in and say, hey, we're selling just a basic product at a 30-40% gross margin. It gets very difficult to get an investor on board. So try to do repeatable kind of business, repeatable sale, say recurring revenue, SaaS piece, which a lot of the investors get excited about, right? That's the product market fit. You're getting like 1 or 2 or 3, 5 customers. Willingness to pay is getting tested out, the pricing aspect kind of getting tested out. And at this point, as a founder, you need to do that yourself. Do not expect a sales guy to kind of come in and do it for you, right? The first few customers, we want the founders to go in and sell. That's the only case you're going to get the actual feedback from the customers, right? The third piece, once you get the funding and so forth, showing the MVP, showing the POC and so forth, is the scale up. And that's where you are trying to essentially, all the processes of the company need to change at that point. It needs to be very process centric, right? So can you press on the accelerator? You have, hey, this is kind of my marketing aspect. This is how I'm going to get the customer. This is my pitch deck. This is a video, recording of how I'm going to train my sales guy whom I'm going to hire, right? So that is more of a scale up, is more of a process. So you know the product that you're building. You have done a POC. You know the type of customers you're going to go after. And the third piece is the scale up, which is most important. And that's where most of the companies, Indian companies, we fail. We become small size SMEs. We don't become startups because we are unable to scale. That's a complete process game. And that's when new kind of hiring needs to happen, right? The scale up aspect needs to be very process centric. Okay, so I'll stop here. But these are the 3 main phases. And these are the typical challenges what we have seen across all of our startups. And pivoting is okay. Pivot always happens, right? 50% of our current 20 startup portfolio have pivoted. Right? Yeah, please.
Som, thank you for bringing out a very important point. I stressed talking to customers, but I forgot that you need to understand what your competition does. Yeah. Far too many tech founders turn around and say, I don't have competition. And every time I've been mentoring a company and a founder has told me, I don't have competition, I immediately tell him, you ain't looked hard enough, right? And your competition, remember what I said about the camera guys, your competition may not be somebody making a competing product. It could be a near adjacency. So very important to talk to competition, and thank you for bringing that out. Rijin, you are a very interesting case study here because you're in the silicon IP business, very esoteric, and even there it's analog IP, not digital, that we're all familiar with. So I'd be fascinated, you know, and if you could also very briefly touch upon how did you pick this area? Not too many analog companies in India in the semiconductor space. So over to you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, PVG, sir, for this wonderful opportunity. Am I audible? Yeah, it's definitely an honor to be part of this wonderful panel. So I'll just give an overview about how we started this venture. So when during 2020 early, we had a college union get together where we with a couple of friends were sharing about the core industry, core area. We all were part of electronics and communication department. And out of 66 in our class, only we 4 members were there who are working on the core area. So we wanted to contribute something back as to the alma mater in terms of some internship and programs. And we 4 guys, you know, had a couple of discussions then, and that got evolved. The other 2 guys were still working on another area, and the person with who I co-founded the company, he after BTech, he was part of the semiconductor foundry in India, the SEL, and then which was part of ISRO then, who moved to Germany to pursue his master's and PhD. So he shared a point that, you know, there is a lot of potential opportunities for analog segment in India as well as globally. This is about mid of 2020, and that discussion got evolved. I did a basic market research and figured out that definitely yes, there is some potential in that particular sector. Semiconductors and this analog sector, picking up that particular areas because the technical guy who's the co-founder who took care of the product and technology, who's a CTO, he picked that area because it is fundamentally his domain area of expertise. Yeah. So that part is taken care. Then me coming from a business background, I picked the strategy, sales and marketing, and that's how we co-founded the company in 2020 September. So then at that point of time, the semiconductor industry, I would say was not like, it was part of the backstage sector, the unsung hero. It was the COVID that actually gave this light to the entire semiconductor industry and the space. And even the government also have started pumping in a lot of schemes and programs to promote this sector. So by then, you know, within around 1 year, we had started developing a lot of activities when it comes to the internship activity, when it comes to the areas that we want to select. We were one of the semi-finalists in the Swadeshi Microprocessor Challenge. So there are 2 parts to it. Like one is the technical aspect that we wanted to develop, and at the other side, it is more about the visibility, the marketing, and getting the right people, getting the right contacts, and all those segments. So we started with one of the national level program, which was co-hosted by Maker Village and MeitY, and we were one among the top 100 in that particular segment. And we were also trying to bid for an RFP that was floated by MeitY. So at that point of time, we were too young in the space because their criteria was minimum 2 years post company registration. So we are too early to be part of that venture. But one advantage at that point of time that was that we were noticed by a lot of people in that community, which they wanted to collaborate. So we tried to build a consortium with the support from the MeitY. And then after that, we backed, I would say, the litmus test for our startup was like when we backed the first strategic investment from IIT Hyderabad, from the FabCI. That was the first milestone that we would say, like, that was more convincing to ourselves. Then later after that, we had the technical team. We worked with a lot of IITs and NITs, onboarded a lot of interns. We applied for multiple government challenges. We won a couple of them. And in last September, we did the final. And again, we were trying to be as close to our potential customers, like Sir said. You know, we were reaching out to potential customers and figuring out what exactly is their requirement. So instead of we having our own IP roadmap, our IP roadmap was primarily, or to a great extent, 90% purely based on our potential customer with whom we have already spoke and who have got an interest. Once we develop it, then there is a commercial terms to it, but still, whatever IP portfolio that we have on the roadmap, it's purely based on the customer and their potential end customers, and we successfully taped out our first semiconductor IP in September.
Great. Wow.
Thank you so much. And the simulation results were, now we as a team, we wanted our product to be in par or better than the import substitute IPs. And the simulation results that we have is already promising, and we have the tape out. Packaging is done, and the semiconductor IP is expected to reach somewhere in this week. And we are also awarded the most promising semiconductor startup by Indian Electronics and Semiconductor Association last month. So I would say that, in a way, like Sir and many other veterans say, we are at the right moment, right time, in the right space. And that ecosystem, right from the center, the state, and the entire association around, is supporting and coming up with a lot of activities to guide, mentor, and even fund the startups in semiconductor industry, so that we build products that is relevant and an import substitute for India and its coming company portfolio requirements. That's a brief about it. Thank you so much.
Great. Thanks, Rijin. And 2 years from startup, you've already taped out. That's a very creditable achievement.
My only request, Rijin, is don't just go for import substitution. Look at the entire world as a customer.
Right. Yes, sir. Like you rightly said, this being an opportunity where we can highlight that import substitute Indian market.
Correct.
And then that IPs, whatever we have, is definitely a potential export.
Absolutely.
So we are getting support from even from the government entities who have agreed to say that they will certify our IPs and its performance, so that we can use that certification to our customers abroad. So, thank you, sir. Yeah.
Thanks, Som, for, I was just going to say that you anticipated me. Thank you for that. Before, I'm going to not go more than 2 or 3 questions to the audience. I want to open it up. But I just want to leave one thought in your mind, given the kind of people we have on the panel. Please think about what are the top 2 or 3 things that you would like changed in the startup ecosystem. Many of you are either founders or you're thinking of starting up. So what would be the top 2 or 3 changes that you'd like in the startup ecosystem? Just think about it, so it'll help you formulate your questions. Prabhu, let me come to you, since you are in that cusp of scaling. We talked about, the presentation has the numbers from the Inc. 42 report that 90% of the startups are failing.
Right.
We talked about, how do you get customer trust and get a customer PO? From your personal experience, any advice to founders or people thinking of doing a startup of that particular journey of how do you define, get product market fit, how do you get customers to believe in you, and very importantly, give you that first PO? Any, from your personal experience?
Right, sure. It's a great question and very complex to sort of put it in one perspective. It has multiple pieces to it, so I'll just try to join and see if it makes sense. One is to convince the customer. So when we went to the market, we didn't have the product. The product was on the PPT. So like what Mananji said and what Som said, that go out there and talk to the customer even before we build a product, right? So that's what we did. We put out on a PPT and then we circulated around. I don't have the count of the customers, but but guess what? We landed, government of Karnataka was our first customer. So currently we have deployed across 100 villages. So how did we get there is we had a PPT and then we demonstrated them. So the demo is on the PPT. So there was no product actually. So one hack was we just took the Google dashboard. Google gives you a free dashboard creation. So we sort of put an Excel sheet behind it. It was simulating the data, and we said this is how. Because in IoT you need a lot of hardware. I mean, if it is a semiconductor, you need the fabs and everything. So we didn't have anything. So we just said this is the dashboard, and this is how the product is actually working. You can see the simulation there. So that's how we sort of hacked to sort of build that MVP. We didn't even have a product, but then we built some sort of a demoable thing there and got a first PO. And once the PO was in the hand, then the struggle was to build the product. So that is the clock was ticking. So that was something that I will probably I would want to change if I have to start again. And luckily we were lucky enough to get the product out. Now from that point onwards, it was just one customer. Now the biggest testament was to, is this actually going to repeat? Are we going to get 10 of these such customers at all? So that's where we had to talk another hundreds and hundreds of customers while this product was getting deployed and everything. So we are three co-founders. One is purely focused on the technology. He doesn't get anything into the business part of it, right? He's purely focused on the technology, and I manage the business part of it. And then we have a CEO who manages the entire strategy, vision, and everything go to market. So that way, my focus has been like purely build a pipeline so that we can get another 3 customers in the next 3 months. And B2B is very hard, right? It will take somewhere around 3 to 6 months to the first demo to the getting a PO. Okay. So how do you sustain in that 6 months? So we sort of we don't build anything. I mean, though we have a customized board and everything, we sort of outsource everything. Right? We get partners. We get even free samples that way. So we sort of keep ourselves lean so that we can build the pipeline, so getting the customer. And then repeatable is one thing which is directly tagged to the cash flow and our sustainability. Are we going to sustain next month, next 6 months, next 1 year? So building that runway was very critical. So we have pivoted. Right now we have a certain pivot. Because, for example, now we are building something for the appliance market, the home appliance market. So that was like, when we went on meeting customers and customers, like attending events. Yesterday we were in it was a small closed room event, but guess what? I just took a chance and I went there, and there was a huge use case there, which would get us about a 10,000 volume, production volume. So the discussion on now to have a first demo. So discovering what the customer needs and how we can, but one thing we were lucky was that within the product that we have built, so we're trying to see if I can do a little bit of deviation and make it repeatable. So that is something which was affordable to us. Yeah. Wherein if it was a big shift, if I have to build another product now, it's going to be very challenging. So in my opinion, I think the pivoting, you can take a chance if you have built 100% of your product, and if 20% has to be shut out, and then just take 80% and make that repeatable. That's, I think, is going to open up a lot of opportunities, and for you it will be a less burn in terms of redesigning, because hardware is hard. Software, I mean, you can just take the library, pull out some code, write another fresh lines of code. But then hardware is, once you have the board assembled, once you have your design is ready, it cannot be just pivoted into something else. So that's something we were fortunate enough to do that. And ask is such a powerful thing, as Som said, and Nizam also touched upon that. So asking for the community, asking for help is something I would encourage all of them who are starting up, go out there and ask, and people are ready to help. It could be partners, it could be ecosystem, it could be the government as well. There are a lot of seed funds that are available. You just have to go there, discover, apply. As Regine also mentioned about, there are a lot of competitions that government is ready to fund. They give you grants. The best part is equity free, right?
Yes.
Those grants are equity free. You don't even have to get to that term sheets and everything. It's just the grant, right? Wow, awesome. Karnataka Startup, Elevate, all of those give you grants. So go out there and grab those opportunities. And even if you are experimenting with your product, those grants will help you to sustain, right? For the next 6 months, for the 1 year, to try to figure out product market fit. So that is, the ecosystem is very vibrant, and as Som said, now is the right time to start. So I wish everyone who's starting up to sort of all the best, and take some of these if it is helpful.
Great.
Perhaps.
Nizam, let me turn to you, because you've got lots of high-tech startups in Baker Village, and I'm sure you deal with your incubating companies on a daily basis. Same issue. do you as an incubator, I know you have demo days and you bring investors and customers in, but beyond that, when you work with founders yourself, what do you see are things that you wish they didn't do or they would do differently?
Right.
And so I'm coming to you because you probably look at thousands of business plans on your 20.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, as an incubator, we see a lot of applicants, a lot of incubatees, and the ones who are already incubated, because you're working with hardware products, right? So they have been incubated with us for the past several years. You develop a product, it takes several years, at least minimum 4 to 7 years for you to come out with a product and go through several iterations. So we have had around close to 160 hardware-focused startups. More than half of them have graduated from the program. And currently we have close to around 80 startups who are currently developing their products there. So the key issue that we see not only in some of our startups, unfortunately, and also in some new applicants who come into the stage are, there is no clear understanding of what the market actually needs. So they are very good technically. So these people are like, most of them come from industry background. They have been working with the likes of Qualcomm or Intel and other MNCs. So they come with the experience. But unfortunately, they haven't talked to the core customer who needs that kind of, the product that is needed. So that is one core issue. Second, another thing is like, while they are technically very good, on the business side is something where they lack. So, when for you to have a flourishing enterprise, you need to also know your business side. You need to know how your operations are going to happen. You need to have a good grasp of your HR, for example, of how you are going to deal with your customers, how you are going to deal with your employees. And that is the skill that sometimes they lack and which we try to fulfill also. Funding is never an issue for the startups because, as PVG also mentioned, there's a lot of government grants that come in and a lot of private equity, investors who are interested in the hardware space and all who are coming in with funds and everything. So funding is never an issue, but where they lack something is the lack of focus in terms of, trying to come out with the product is one of the major issues that we foresee in this space.
So, some of your portfolio companies, or you've certainly looked at business plans where, I know all startups are hard, but a lot of the IoT product startups, which are, let's say, B2C, are in a sense easier. They can go to market and go to cash flow much faster than particularly deep tech. Somebody like Rijin, for example, the runway is much longer. So what would be your advice to someone who's looking at a IP-heavy, engineering-heavy kind of product development and startup versus some of the other guys?
Sure. Yeah, very clearly we see, even though we are more of a deep tech fund, we see, different varieties in that entire scale. We see deep science startups, hard tech startups, right? With a lot of IP, patent, and so forth across the scale. And of course, we see a lot of companies that I typically call tech-enabled solutions plays, right? So you're right, PVG. So as you go more to the right from the left, my right to the left, these kind of initial tech-enabled companies, frankly speaking, not too much of a differentiation. So any investor and so forth would want to come in, they want to see kind of some proof points, because at the end of the day, this is kind of pure play, execution play, right? You need to have good team, you need to have some initial well thought out customers and the business plan, and then you need to raise money and you need to execute. So some of these proof puddings, right? Proof of the pudding actually lies in terms of the traction elements that you are having with the customer and so forth. Now, as you move right, that's where the real technology, the differentiation, the articulation kind of come in, right? So what we tend to look at is the space big enough? That's the first major piece. Or is the potential play big enough? Is going to be. Because otherwise, there's no point of an investor like me unless and until it gets to be at least a $500 to $1 billion kind of a exit, right? The second piece we look at is in terms of the solution and the differentiation, and that's when you are going out trying to raise the funding, which is specifically your question, without the initial traction or even developing the product. I think articulation about what you are building, why you are building, why is it going to be the different, right? What is your USP? What is competition? That amount of insight really is extremely important to convince the incoming investor, be it for grants, might you definitely look at it. If it's for incubation at Maker Village, if it's initial angel funding, and there's plenty of amount of funding available. You need to articulate your storyline better, which means you need to highlight why you are doing a certain product, how is it different, what is competition doing, why do you think, why should the investor invest in you first and foremost, right? So if you come up with that kind of a detailed articulation about why, how, and convince the investor, right? That's only when he or she is going to come in, even before an MVP or attraction. For example, right now we are looking at a quantum compute company, right? It's as far deep tech as it gets. So we are peeling up the layers of the onions, looking at, hey, along these plethora of 70 plus companies globally, right? What is unique in this specific company? Is it doing ion tap or is it doing photonics? So we are peeling up the layers of the onions and trying to dig in, right? So once you say deep tech, hard tech, you need to articulate why and how you're doing it in a much more comprehensive terms. Yeah, does that answer your question?
Sure. So I guess Nizam, this is my final question from my side before I open it up. Most founders need sounding boards.
Right.
And my contention, I'm not an investor, but talking to friends who do that, they say that if entrepreneurs ask for help, we'll give it, but otherwise we are only doing that status monitoring. And
right.
very often, someone like Som, personally, sorry Som, you're the poster boy for that. But given your corporate background, it would be a shame if your portfolio companies did not tap you for your industry
right.
knowledge, right? But one of the problems that I've seen with incubators across the country is that you have a lot of business mentors.
Sure.
You don't have technology mentors.
Right.
Do you think both as Maker Village and across the incubator space, are you looking at expanding your mentor networks?
Sure. Mentor network is one of the strongest pillar in as an incubator that can support the startup system. So right now, PVG there are upwards of around 325 incubators across the country, and everyone is vying for that the startup pie and everything. So they're trying to attract. So everyone offers this mentor network, but unless the startup look at the incubator and the quality of the mentors that are actually provided by the incubator, it is going to be a difficult match that is going to happen, right? So while on one side we have very technology focused incubators and like Maker Village, and there are other couple of preeminent ones within the country and all, you have also other incubators who are actually supporting with a lot of business side mentors and everything like that. So for a deep tech startup, what you have to actually look at is is the quality of the mentor network that is very strong. So as PVG was mentioning, it's not just only about the business side, but also you need to have a technology side. Although you have a technological background, there is a way until, there is, as a sounding board, you need to have that discussion with those technical experts in terms of how good your product is, or what are the other better things that you can do about it and anything like that. So unless you have that strong mentor network or the access to that mentors, it is going to be very difficult. And we at Maker Village, we are expanding that. So we are connecting with R&D institutions, we are connecting with IITs, we are connecting with the top industrial players within the market and all, who are actually supporting our startups in terms of offering their expertise and also connecting with us. And that's one strong pillar that we offer. And we are actually also not, we are creating that platform wherein the startups can come and integrate and talk to these mentors also. So actually per weekly mentor sessions, or even some a monthly sessions that are going to happen. This is something that we as an incubator are forcing it, that will actually help and go along with the startups also.
Can I add one more piece? Yeah. Right. So just a one word of caution though. I mean, to a certain extent, I have personally mentored a lot of startups as well. And sometimes that mentor aspect is slightly overrated as well, because see, at the end of the day, having a network of mentors that you can go to is very important, right? There's no single mentor who can go in and advise you on all of these aspects. Sometimes it's good to have, a business mentor focused on that certain specific industry that you are going after. It's good to have those specific networks, a mentor from that industry who can open up those doors in that specific industry, right?
Right.
A finance or a CFO guy would probably be a different aspect. There could probably be more of a generic startup mentors, right? That you can bounce over ideas and thoughts. Hey, I'm hiring a senior guy. Can you please interview this person, right? It could be that sort of mentors as well. So my suggestion is, a single mentor or one or two mentors doesn't work.
Yeah.
You'd probably need to have one or two good mentors that you can trust, and a loose network of multiple people that you can go and talk to, depending on your specific needs and so forth. You should get the feedback from multiple people and then make your own decision, because these mentors would probably have their own set of biases as well, right? And what I've historically seen, if it's a business mentor who has been extremely successful in his entrepreneurship journey, but as a services company, right? Yeah. As you go for a product, his skill set and so forth is frankly going to pull you down. I've consistently seen that. So be very cautious about who you need to get an advisor or mentor on your board.
All right, I've got a bunch of questions, but in the interest of time, I'm going to open it up to the audience. Anyone with a question, with a comment? Yes, sir. Can we get a microphone over to him? And any specific person on the panel you'd like to ask it to?
Good morning, all of you. So it's open to all. The question is, when you say as a startup, you should talk to customers to pitch your idea, get customers. All of you mentioned some part of it. To talk to like-minded people as well. What about the fear of somebody steals your idea? Like I think so, Prabhu sir mentioned that he didn't have a product. He just had a PPT in terms of what his idea was. Talking to like-minded people, somebody who you don't know, but who might be, a better financial or technological aspect, who could, steal your idea and get it in the market first, before then. How can you, the fear of somebody stealing your idea, how do you address that?
Can I take that?
Please.
Yeah. See, if your idea within a single pitch gets stolen, right, then this is not an idea worth pursuing at all, right? This is my view. There will be dozens, zillions of ideas floating around, and ideas are dime and a dozen. It's the founder is that person who takes that idea, puts it into a product and so forth, right? I would probably, unless and until you are doing a very exceptional patent and so forth, but I would less worry that, hey, I have this idea of doing a B2C consumer product, if somebody kind of steals it. Unless and until you are talking with the customers, doing a focus group, try to sign up an NDA with them if you're paranoid about that idea. But more and more, I have seen founders getting hung up on the idea and less on the execution part. That's it. That is when the rubber hits the road. You are executing something, you're building something, right? That's when the patent, the real idea kind of comes in.
You know, there's a famous saying, a startup is 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration.
Correct.
Yeah.
I also just want to add to that point also. It's not about, you're not going to talk to the customer, what we call as primary research, right? It's not about going to talk to the customer and telling it about your product. It's actually asking the customer about what his needs are and trying to deal. It's like you're not going to feed him like, leading questions, or you're not going to say that this is the product, would you use it? If you say that, yeah, he might say yes, and that's where you are disclosing your product, right? So instead of that, the way you should tackle that is, you should ask leading questions. You should ask him questions wherein he opens up about what his needs are, what his requirements are, and from that you formulate your product more. You get more clarity on how your product should get developed and everything like that. So that's the way it should go.
Hi, PVG and Somda, Devanshu here, and I was supposed to be there but got delayed with traffic. That's a different thing. I'm telling you, most of the customers don't have time to steal the item. The second one, what Somda told, that if they can steal in one click, we should not be doing that. The third one, which I pursue as a IoT security, cybersecurity company, is to raise the bar. Make the product every time more complex, more complex. I'm very much inspired with Google. The interface is very simple, but inside goes, nobody knows about it. So big data, that helps you. Now the question to you, what I am looking at, as a person who has been running a startup, IoT security startup for a year, and always got fancied by Dovetail, can there be a bigger marketplace such as Amazon, where products like us can be sold? We don't find it. And what I am working with DST, very frankly, is that can you create a buyer-seller meet or a buyer-seller portal, one that government has like GEM for the private sector. So any comment on that, that this will help us to probably get more POCs, probably more people know about the product. So a good marketplace where startups, mostly into B2B and deep tech space, can put their product and it can be seen by the customer. Is there a way forward?
Well, do we have Rahul here?
Yeah. No, but Divyanshu, yes, to answer your question, almost every single industry body today is organizing this. Now, in the electronics space, ELSINA, which is the oldest, the Electronics Component Industries Association, which is the oldest industry body in this space, has 2 structured buyer-seller meets every year. One in summer, one in winter, one is in Delhi, one is in Chennai, right? Most of the others, IESA has it, MATE has it. So every time they have their annual conclave, they do that. And most industry bodies are also looking today at government tenders, because preferential market access is the law of the land. And there is a value addition criteria which is defined. So most industry bodies will do it for you. My advice to you would be align with any one of them. And most of them are very active in the space. Nizam, yeah, and preferential market access is applicable to government borrowing.
Yeah.
But do bear in mind that there is an OECD study on this. 33% of total demand in a country comes from government, state, central, PSU. And today, there is even a demand now, I think the discussion is there in the Economic Times. Even telecom companies, because they operate with a license from the government, even they are being told that PMA norms will now apply for equipment that you put on your network. Already, Huawei is banned from Indian telecom networks. That is extending, right? But their PMA for private sector is a lot more complicated because it's tied to financing, but industry bodies will take up your case. You want to add to that?
Yeah, just one point that I wanted to add on this. Now you have this GEM portal, right? So GEM portal, we have been talking, from a mighty level, we have been talking with the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology on, can we have a separate section just for the startups on the GEM itself? On the GEM itself. And discussions have been going on. It has not progressed yet to the extent that we hoped for. So that will give exclusive access on the GEM that will highlight what the startups have been doing, highlight their products, and get more customers orders for them. So that is something that we have been working on.
Thank you. Really good. Appreciate that.
Any other?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, this is more specific to you, PVG and Parth.
You're not audible.
Yeah, it is more specific to you, Mr. PVG.
Okay.
And also Mr. Som. Okay, you both must have been in lots of these investor panels before. And many of people must have come, startups must have come with their MVP, with their ideas and so on. Okay, and out of 100%, now let me say the 100 people who have come to you, which industry do you really think is the most safest way to invest? Let me say there are a lot of healthcare guys coming in, lots of fintech, someone build something on supply chain, logistics and so on. So if I want to ask you on the ratio, Or you may talk to your panelists and say, okay, this is the safest bet. Let's not go to healthcare. Let's not go into fintech, or let's get into logistics. Okay, and that's one question.
Yeah, I think
Yeah, and I have one more question.
Can you just talk? I mean, it's bouncing off and it's a
Okay.
lot of echo out here.
he's actually anticipating a question I had for you, which is how would you pick a venture to invest in? Am I correct?
Yeah, yeah. Which industry do you prefer? Which industry do you prefer?
Which industry
And,
sector would
I have one more
So
question.
which
I want to.
sector? Which
Yeah, which
sector?
sector?
See, we are a sector, I mean, we don't go sector specific, right? We are a bit sector agnostic. What we look at more from a deep tech standpoint, we look at the kind of the type of IP, the type of technology fort moat in the business, right? So we have invested across deep science places. We have invested in biotech companies. We have invested in material science companies. We have invested in an industrial IoT company from IIT Chennai. We have invested in hardcore AI-based cybersecurity startup. Recently, we invested in a 5G software company, right? So it's a combination of multiple aspects, but there are 4 aspects I think we typically look at. One is, of course, how big is the market size or how big is the potential market size, right? What is the landscape? Are there many competitors or is it like an emerging area, okay? Which means in the next 3 to 5 years, it's going to go big. The second piece we look at is the team, right? In terms of how good of a founding team is that? Do they have a vision? Do they understand the market? Are they from this field, or newcomers in this field is also okay, but what kind of, we love second-time entrepreneurs in a big way as well, because they have gone through the struggles of being a first-time entrepreneur. The third piece, obviously, we look at is, what are they developing? What is exactly the differentiation of the product? What kind of potential IPs are possible? Is it very competitive space? Is it not? What is the exact solution? And the fourth piece is, of course, in terms of the traction, the MVP they're building up, are they talking to customers? These are probably the four big spaces.
Okay, we're out. Can I just check, since you've already asked one question, if there's anyone else who's got a question? Otherwise, we are going to be available, but we have to clear the stage.
Can I just add on to what's...
Very quickly, because we'll take one more question before we close.
So while you look at the sectors which VCs are interested, I mean, certainly all of us are in this business for profits, but then that's one angle from a VC perspective in terms of making profitability. Is it going to become big? But you, as a founders, right? So you will have to look for the customer profits. Which are the businesses that can get me more margins, that can get me more profits? Because if that problem is solved, then I think you're going to have a bigger runway, bigger profits, bigger headaches of cash flows. So pick the sectors that you think that will bring more margins and more profits and make your business bigger. And then I think the rest of the questions from the VC side will be answered automatically, in my opinion.
Okay,
Sir,
I've been
one
signaled that we are completely out of time. So why don't we take it offline? Yeah. Because I've been signaled by Sushmita there that we are completely out of time.
I mean, this will be useful.
We are going to be available outside.
This will be useful for everyone, actually.
Okay.
Just sorry for...
Sushmita, can you give me 2 more minutes? 2 minutes.
So,
Okay.
Sorry. See, if I'm a startup guy, I'm coming to the panel, to the investor panel with a fresh product. The case 1. Case 2, I am acquiring someone from IncuBT, okay, who has already tested half of the market, and I have acquired that particular IncuBT, and I'm coming to you, the panelists, okay, for asking for investment. Whom do you prefer? Do you prefer a new idea or already an idea that has been tested? Do you differentiate between that when you are investing, or do you consider both on the equal page?
I think that's been already answered. He's asking if somebody comes to you after an acquisition, will you prefer him or someone who's coming in fresh? I think that's been answered by Som. He's completely agnostic. He's looking at how much do you know of what is it that you're doing. Do you know the business? I mean, what I said about do you know the technology equally applies. If you've got money, you've got an investor or you yourself are the investor, and you acquire someone, but you know nothing about that industry. So let me put it this way. If you have spent all your life in the hotel industry and you decide to buy out an AI company and the team is exiting, wait, there's a parallel. There's a guy who makes aeroplanes and has just bought Twitter. Okay. All right. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. You've been a great audience, and apologies for the late start. Sushmita, back to you.